with that piece of data, like there's so many that we've talked about. Really, is like borrowing capacity, their goals, looking at locations, vacancy rates, town planning that may or may not be coming up in certain locations. I'm sure there's so much more data to be looking at to make sure a location is a good location for that client and their goals. What are some of the top metrics or the top pieces of data that, maybe there's three to five that are like the top pieces of data that you make sure are on point when you're buying for a client, Steve?
Okay, so first one's return, because the whole point of buying a commercial property is to get some form of return. So like the cash flow is what you look at. How high you go on the cash flow is obviously depends what you risk and what you want to get from there. So return's the first one. Otherwise, you just go buy residential and forget about it. The next one's probably vacancy rate, just because for me, like ex-engineer, it's all about risk mitigation. I want a bigger cash flow return as I can get with as little risk as I can. So the vacancy rates kind of do that. Look at the trend of the vacancies as well. So that's the cool thing about core logic and stuff like that. You can see how it's kind of going. And luckily for a lot of commercial investors, like for industrial, vacancy rates have dropped tremendously the last 3-4 years. Like we're talking down from like 7%, down from 7% down to like 0.3 to 0.5% in most capital cities. So when 7 years ago, when people used to go, don't buy commercial, it's too high risk, they were somewhat right. Now, not so much, because vacancy rates are so tight. We're almost on par with residential. That's where you've got to be mindful, obviously, the new stock coming on there. And there's stuff outside of my power I can't control. I can't control the economy, interest rates, wars in Ukraine, supply chain issues and stuff like that. But that's why it's investing. If it was foolproof, everyone would do it and it'd be guaranteed everyone would be rich. So looking at the area, the vacancy. The other one's probably just make sure everything's approved. That's probably more specific to the property, I'd say. I'm trying to go through the things that are kind of burn people. Infrastructure and transport around it. So like we mentioned before, talking to town planners, especially if you're buying regional, like you don't want to buy in an area where they do a diversion through the city or there's a new complex getting opened up there. And then the other ones, for office space, it'd be culture, surprisingly. I used to just talk numbers, but for me, moving forward, and this is going to sound a bit woo-woo, office culture's changing. I don't care who says it. People go, people need face-to-face contact. There's some cool stuff coming out. You can put on virtual reality goggles and go to office meetings pretty much live from now. I even saw Disney. I'm not sure if you guys seen this. Disney have a platform now, like it's like a little ball rolling thing. You can actually stand on and walk around in different directions and run on, and it also can move you as well. So you can sit there and it can actually emulate like the chair moving and stuff like that. So we're 10, 20 years time, we're not going to want to sit on a train for an hour and a half to go into the Sydney CBD, for instance. So I think cultures for office space and retail somewhat as well, because that might open up some options for capital growth. If you're choosing a good lifestyle area, that's what's going to bring that area forward. But yeah, they're probably the main ones I'd look at first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about with retail, like similar to what you say with office and the technology and how culture's changing, but also retail shopping, how that can change with images of your body and your size and your shape, and trying on a digital dress or shirt or pants or whatever to see if it fits you and see what it looks like before you even have it bought or sent to your house, eliminating people going to retail shopping centres too. So things that will change in the future for sure.
Yeah, Joe, that's probably a little misconception as well, because not many people buy retail shopping. I'm talking big scale stuff like the big Westfields and stuff like that. And that's part of the stats you can almost don't ignore. But when you see retail spending's down, that has bloody nothing to do with the cafe that you own or the medical centre that you own. Like, I don't care how many people are going through David Jones buying stuff. Like, that's going to have nothing to do with my personal retail investments. So that one's probably more for foot traffic. So that's probably another factor of when you're looking at, if you're going retail, foot traffic is key. Like people walking past, even road traffic exposure. That's a kind of a critical thing for capital growth of the area.
One thing, like a story that a mate of mine, he's bought a property and it had low vacancy rates when he bought it. I mean, this is the issue too with why we're doing this as well, through education to help people not make sort of mistakes. But he did the bought it off the plan, and the vacancy rates was super low when he bought it. When it was established, now it's ready for rent. The vacancy rates have gone up because there's been an increase in supply in that region. Would that be one of the other fundamentals too? Like just you said, sort of talking to town planners and seeing what else is coming on board.
Yeah, so it sounds like he's bought in like a new estate almost, where they're building lots of them. I do buy some, like, in quotation marks, off the plan, but they're the ones where they've like knocked down 10 houses or a big warehouse and they're building lots of little ones. So it's not flooding the market. It might be like an extra 10 going in that area, and that's what keeps it. Weirdly, the vacancy rates go up a little bit for that complex. So the way it normally works is it takes a long time to fill 50% of the complex, because if you're a tenant, you've got negotiating power with 10 different owners. So you're gonna the rent that they advertise is actually going to be less, and you're going to have a bit more kind of negotiating power. So it actually takes a long time to fill up. Whereas the last like 20%, 30% goes really quickly because they don't have options. They're trying to get in before it goes. But that's if there's one. If he's bought on the fringe where they're building 2, 3, 4, of course it's going to go up. But that's the same fundamental as residential. Don't go buy in a completely new estate where they're building 500 homes going, oh, but the vacancy rates for the current homes were tight. That's also why the council approved the new homes, because there wasn't enough. But they bought at the wrong time. So like I'll go back to me being in like the Hills district going up. We've seen it with every single new area, like Kellyville, really tight vacancy rates because it was basically farmland. Then they built all stock and it skyrocketed. Then that came down. Then Box Hill and Riverston happened, and the same thing. And like Box Hill vacancy rates used to be 7 to 11% when they built all the new stock. Now they're down. I haven't checked it in a year or two, but I imagine it's down to kind of sub 1% now. So timing that market, and we're not talking short term here. We're talking like 5-10 years. But again, off the plan always comes with risks as well. If you're buying an off the plan, there's heaps that can go wrong. Like the developer can liquidate, they can do what's phoenixing,